indicate a low tire or bad suspension. Now I'm going to walk around to the passenger side. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to check my alternator. Make sure it's not cracked or broken. No missing loose or broken bolts. It's belt driven. My belt is not cut, no frayed, no less than 3/4 inch of play. All my wiring's connected. There's no cuts, no frays, no exposed wire. I'm going back to my exhaust. I'm going to check it from the front to the back. I make sure all my clamps are on, not cracked or broken or missing. I'm going to look for any black soot, which can indicate a leak somewhere in my system. Come to my windshield reservoir. Make sure it's not cracked or broken, not leaking. Make sure it's filled to the max level, and my cap is on and tight. All right, let's walk around to the driver's side now. Okay. I'm going to work from the front to the back, in and out. I'm going to check my coolant reservoir. Make sure it's not cracked or broken, not leaking. No missing loose or broken bolts. Filled to the proper level, and my cap is on. Come down to my water pump. It's not cracked or broken, no missing loose or broken bolts. Remember, I got fluid in it, not leaking. And it's also belt driven. My belt's not cut or frayed, no exposed, no less than 3/4 inch of play. Come back to my oil and check my oil. If it's low, I'm going to fill it, fill it at 1 gallon at a time. We'll come back here to my power steering pump and my air compressor pump. Both are connected to each other. Both are gear driven, not cracked or broken, no missing loose or broken bolts. I got fluid or air, so not leaking. Come up here to my power steering reservoir. Make sure it's not cracked or broken, not leaking. Make sure it's filled to the maximum level, and my cap is on and tight. Now I'm going to check all my hoses for ABCL, abrasions, bubbles, and cuts, and not leaking, and all my clamps are on. Check all my wiring. Make sure all my wiring is no cuts, no frays, no exposed wire, no illegal tape. Check my steering column, my steering linkage. Check my steering column, my U-joints, make sure they're properly greased. My gearbox is not leaking, no missing loose or broken bolts. My pivot arm, my drag link, steering knuckle, steering shoe, tie rod end. All parts not cracked or broken, no missing loose or broken bolts. All my castle nuts are on with my carter pin in and bent. Okay, now I'll check my suspension. I'll check my spring mount, leaf spring, U-bolt and saddle, and my shock. All parts not cracked or broken, no missing loose or broken bolts. I'm going to make sure I got no shiny metal in between my U-bolt and saddle, which indicate a loose U-bolt or broken U-bolt, and my shock is not leaking. Come to my brakes. Check my brake line and hoses. No abrasions, bubbles, and cuts, not leaking, and my clamps are on. Brake chamber. Make sure my brake chamber is not cracked or broken or dented. It is properly mounted with no missing loose or broken bolts. My retaining ring is in and not leaking. Slack adjustment push rod. Make sure it's properly mounted with my pin in, my cutlass pin in. No more than 1 inch of play. My drum. Make sure it's not cracked or broken, no discoloration, no legal welds. My linings, shoes, linings, pads. Make sure they're not cracked or broken. Make sure there's no less than 1/4 inch of pad left, and I'm free of any grease and debris. Come out here to my tires. I got my ICD. Got my inflation, condition, and depth. I'm going to check my inflation. I'm going to make sure I got my metal cap on. Check it with the tire gauge. Make sure it's filled to the manufacturer specs. I'm going to check my condition. Make sure my sidewalls are not cut. No abrasion, bubbles, and cuts, not leaking. Make sure I'm evenly worn. And make sure no less than 30 seconds of tread at my lowest point of my tire. Check my rims. Make sure they're not cracked or broken. No legal welds and no hammer marks around the bead. Check my lug nuts. Make sure all my lug nuts are present. They're not cracked or broken or loose. I'm going to look for any oxidation in between my nut and my rim because they're metal on aluminum, which indicate a loose nut. My hub oiler. Make sure my hub oiler is not cracked or broken, no missing loose or broken bolts. I got fluid in it, not leaking. I'm going to pull this cap off, stick my pinky down through the first knuckle, make sure it's I got oil in it. Alright, come back to the door, my lights. Make sure my left, right, four ways, clearance lights and running lights are all working properly. And they're amber in color. And the door, make sure my door opens and closes easily. Make sure my hinges are not cracked or broken, no miss, loose, or broken bolts. My weather seal is in. It's not dry, rotted, torn, and it's present. I'll check my mirror. Make sure my mirror is not cracked or broken, no miss, loose, or broken bolts. Steps. Make sure my steps are not cracked or broken, no miss, loose, or broken bolts, and I'm free of any debris.
Message from Monica Roadmaster. What the hell is snap on face with rolling eyes?
I'm going to check my fuel tank. Make sure my fuel tank is not leaking. Make sure I got my rubber or leather straps in between my strap and tank. My cap is on. I got a seal with T-bar and chain. Next thing, I'll check my drive shaft. Make sure it's not cracked or broken or bent. My U-joint's properly greased, no missing, loose, or broken bolts. Catwalk, same as the steps. Not cracked or broken, no missing, loose, or broken bolts, and I'm free of any debris. Check my frame. Just make sure it's not cracked or broken, no legal welds and no legal holes. Now I'm gonna check my airlines. I'll check my airlines on both my trailer and tractor. Make sure my airlines are no abrasion, bubbles, or cuts, not leaking. Make sure my grommets are on. My grommets are not dry rotted, torn, or ripped. I'll check my electrical line on my tractor and trailer. Make sure there's no cuts, no frays, no exposed wire. Now I'm going to do my coupling. Up in here. Check my platform and my apron. Make sure there's no gap in between the two and it's well greased. My fifth wheel skid plate is well greased. I'll make sure my mounting bolts, the fifth wheel mounting bolts are no missing, loose, or broken bolts. And my release lever is in the lock position. My locking pins are in the lock position. Then I'm going to walk around the back, make sure that my locking jaw and kingpin are not cracked or broken. And then my locking jaw is wrapped around my kingpin. Okay. Now I'll come do my second axle. We'll stand right here. Give me your phone. All right. I'm going to check my spring mount, my leaf spring, U-bolt and saddle, my shock, and my spring mount and my torque arm. Make sure all parts are not cracked or broken. No missing, loose, or broken bolts. There's no shiny metal in between my U-bolt and saddle, indicated loose U-bolt. My airbags, there's no abrasion, bubbles, or cuts, not leaking. Properly mounted, and my shock is not leaking. Now I'm going to check my brakes. Check my brake canister. My brake lines first. Make sure there's no abrasion, bubbles, or cuts, not leaking. My clamps are on. I'm going to check my brake drum. Make sure it's not cracked or broken or dent. Properly mounted with no missing, loose, or broken bolts. Both of my retaining rings are in and not leaking. Now check my slack adjuster and push rod. Down in there. Make sure it's properly mounted with my pin in and my cutter pin in and bent. No less than 2 inches of play on my dual chamber. I'm going to check my drum. Make sure it's not cracked or broken, no legal welds, no discoloration. I'm going to check my pads. Make sure my pads are not cracked or broken. No less than a quarter inch of pad left, and I'm free of any grease and debris. Check my tires. Check both my tires for inflation. Use a tire gauge. Make sure I got my metal cap on. I'm going to fill it to the proper manufacturer level. I'm going to check my condition of my tires. Both my tires, and there's no cuts, no abrasion, bubbles, or cuts, not leaking on my sidewalls. On my make sure I'm evenly worn. No less than 2 seconds of tread at the lowest point of my tire. Now I'm going to check my butt spacing in between my tire. Make sure my rims are touching, but not my tires, and I'm free of any debris in between my tires. Now I'm going to check my rim. Make sure my rims are not cracked or broken. No legal welds, no hammer marks around the bead. Now I'm going to check my lug nuts. Make sure all my lug nuts are present. There's none missing, loose, or broken. I'm going to look for any oxidation in between the nut and the rim that can indicate a loose nut. Hub seal. Be sure it's not cracked or broken. No missing, loose, or broken bolts, and it's not leaking. Now I'm going to check my third axle the same way I did my second axle. Come back here, I'm going to check my splash guards. Make sure they're properly mounted with my bars not cracked or broken, my carter pins in. I got DOT tape running down the top of my splash guard. My splash guards are ripped or torn and no more than 8 inches off the ground. I'm going to check my lights. Make sure they're red in color. My left, right turn signal, my 4-way, brake lights, and tail lights all work properly. Now I'm done with this. I'm going to start the trailer now. I'm going to check my header board. Make sure my header board is not cracked or broken. There's no holes in it. All my rivets are in place. They're not missing. Now I'm going to check the side of my trailer. As I go down, I'm going to check the side of my trailer the same way. Make sure there's no bulges, there's no holes in the side. All my rivets are in place, they're not missing. I got my DOT tape running down the side of my trailer. Now I'm going to check the cross members, my frame, my trailer underneath. Check all these cross members right here. Make sure they're not cracked or broken, they're not missing, and no holes in the floorboard. Okay, as I walk down, my next thing I see now is my landing gear. Landing gear, not cracked or broken, no missing, loose, or broken bolts. It's well lubed, so it goes up and down easily. My sand shoe is free of any debris, and my lever is in the hanger position. As I walk down, I get my lights. Check my lights, make sure they're amber in color. My left, my right, my 4-ways, my right lights, and my clearance lights, which are in the corner of the trailer. That they're all working properly. Okay, next thing I got is my air line and connectors underneath my electrical and air. Make sure they're not cutting, no rage bubbles cuts, not leaking. 18 inches off the ground, at least 18 inches, no less than 18 inches off the ground. All my wiring, there's no cuts, no frays, no exposed wire. When I come back to my tandems, I'll check my tandem slide, which is one of the holes in it. Make sure it's not cracked or broken. I'll make sure my tandem release lever is not bent or broken. It's in a lock position. Make sure my pins, there's 4 of them, 2 on each side. One there, one back there. They're in a lock position. Right here. Okay. Now, I notice this is a non-air ride truck, so I'm going to make sure my equalizer and stabilizer bar are not cracked or broken, no missing, loose, or broken bolts. I'm going to check this axle, 4th and 5th, the same way I do my 2nd and 3rd. As I come back, splash guards. Make sure they're properly mounted, not cracked or broken. No missing, loose, or broken bolts. My mud flap is not ripped or torn. No more than 8 inches off the ground. Come back and check my ABS light. Make sure its amber color is properly working. Check my marker light. Red in color, it's properly working. It just stays on. It doesn't go off. It doesn't blink. It doesn't do anything but turn. Alright, let's start at the top. My 3 clearance lights are marker lights. Make sure they're red in color. I'll come down to my door. Make sure all my hinges are not cracked or broken, no missing, loose, or broken bolts. My door opens and closes easily, and also locks into the hanger. We'll come down to my lights, same way I did on my tractor. My left, my right, my 4-ways, my brake light and tail lights are red in color and are all working properly. License plate, make sure it's properly mounted. I got one there. No missing, loose, or broken bolts, and I got a clear lens, not a white, a clear. Then I'll come down to my bumper, my DOT bar. Make sure it's not cracked or broken, not bent more than 6 inches in either direction. No missing, loose, or broken bolts. I got my DOT tape running down the side or bottom of my trailer. Then I'll come over here. I will do my right side the same I did my left side. All right.